Hi, my name is Nofarhana binti Cik Rahim. My metric number is 152,006. Our topic presentation is Identify two learning outcomes from the curriculum specification that can be best measured with performance assessment methods. Describe the performance task appropriately. Before that, let me introduce my group members. Siti Sumaya, Nur Aisyah, and also Putri Nur Fatihah. For our task 1, the learning standard that we take from the SKP Document Standard Curriculum and Pentaksiran for Form 1 student is that we expected student can produce a plan or draft of 2 paragraphs or more and modify this appropriately in response to feedback. Along with content standard, student can communicate with appropriate language, form, and style.
For Learning Standard Task 1, we had prepared an activity that focuses on writing skills. So, the first activity that we had is instructed as below. Students are expected to complete a project on the theme of forest and sustainable production and consumption. Students must work together in group of 4 members. They are supposed to identify an issue regarding the given to be discussed about. Students then will need to produce a complete report on the main topic and the findings. So this activity will focus on the writing skills. Alright, next moving on to the methods of assessment used. Methods of assessment used for Learning Standard Task 1 or Activity 1 that we had chose is performance-based assessment. This type of assessment is suitable for the activity that we had chosen because it requires students to apply knowledge and skills that they had learned. Basically, it requires students to apply their prior knowledge. This assessment also can be used for summative assessment, which is equivalent to the report writing task that had been given. This assessment also provides more relevant and complete evaluation, and it is easier to assess the report using this assessment method. It requires students to demonstrate that they have mastered the specific topic by producing the final report. This can be used to determine the proficiency level of students, their knowledge, to motivate and provide feedback to the students. Alright, now we're going to talk about the purpose of performance-based assessment that we had chosen for Activity 1. First is to define valued outcomes for students. Next is to measure students' ability to apply the skills and knowledge learned from a unit of study. So this is very important because it's going to measure the students' prior knowledge regarding the topic that we had chosen. Next is to improve the students' learning experience by producing the report. And the performance-based assessment is going to improve their learning experience. Next is to identify opportunities for improvement on their prior knowledge. Now we're going to be sharing the rubric for the methods of assessment used that we choose is performance-based assessment. So first we have the task description. To write a full report on the specific issue chosen based on the theme of forest and sustainable production and also consumption. So first we have the criteria. So under criteria column we have topics, organizations, the quality of information, grammar, and also interest level. And then we have the weightage, which I simply put. So I think for topic is 20%, then organization is more important. Therefore, the weightage is higher. And then quality of information, grammar, and also interest levels weightage. Then we have the exemplary, accomplished, developing, and beginning. So for exemplary, yes, 4 points. So we have for topic, if it's directly relevant, and then accomplished, somewhat relevant, developing, remotely related, beginning, totally unrelated. Then for organization, exemplary, good organization, points are logically ordered. And then for accomplished, organized, points are somewhat jumpy, meaning that points are somewhat all over the place. Then developing, some organization points jump around. And then beginning, poorly organized, no logical progression. Next, we have the quality of information. Supporting details specific to subject, exemplary, accomplished. Some details are non-supporting to the subject. So we have some details there that are non-supporting to the topic or the main subject. And then developing, details are somewhat sketchy, do not support the topic. And then for the beginning, unable to find specific data or information. Then grammar, for exemplary, there are no errors. And then for accomplished, only 1 or 2 errors. Developing, more than 2 errors for beginning, a lot of grammatical errors, numerous errors. And then we have interest level. For exemplary, vocabulary is varied, supporting details is vivid, can really be seen, is strongly be seen. And then we have accomplished, the vocabulary is varied, supporting details are useful. And then developing, vocabulary is unimaginative, meaning very straightforward, and the details are super lacking. And then for beginning, basic vocabulary and also needs descriptive words, more descriptive words. And then the other criteria that we could also add in the rubric are timeliness and also the organization. So these are all for the rubric.
The first advantage when used performance-based assessment, students prefer performance-based assessment because they are more relevant to their daily life and provide a greater sense of accomplishment. It is not enough to just study for a test. Students put in many hours and often use sources other than the teacher and textbook. In addition, when an assessment simulates what a person in the field might do, students have several role models to emulate. For example, announcing a game like Harry Carey, or doing basketball analysis like Pat Summitt, or dancing like Michael Flatley or Julian Hope. When an assessment result in a product or performance, students accomplish something they can be proud of. Next, conducting this assessment is to provide teachers with data that can be used to tailor instruction. Performance-based assessment allow teachers to assess area of learning that traditional assessment do not address. Many traditional assessments do not directly measure progress towards the teacher's final learning objective. For example, at the secondary level, a physical educator's goal is usually to teach a student how to play a game or do an activity. However, while skill tests may evaluate performance of discrete skill in a fairly closed environment, they do not evaluate a student's ability to use this skill and put it all together during gameplay. Last but not least, to empower students, performance-based assessments provide students with a degree of autonomy in deciding how their education should progress. It is a powerful motivator to give students a sense of ownership over their own learning process because they have a formative component. Performance-based assessment provide high-quality feedback to students throughout the assessment. Since students have access to the rubric that is used to judge the final product, they can self-assess or peer-assess as they move through the assessment and receive additional feedback. When there is advantage, there must be disadvantage. The limitation of performance assessment is typically take a lot of time for both students and teachers. They are not ideal. This means that fewer assessments can be gathered, so if they are not carefully devised, fewer learning goals will be assessed, which can reduce content validity. State curriculum guidelines can be helpful in determining what should be included in a performance assessment. Additionally, performance evaluations are difficult to accurately measure, which can lead to inaccurate and unfair evaluation.
Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. I am Putri Nur Fatihah binti Ramzan Effendi with metric number 151937. I will be continuing the next presentation. Now, we will look at the Learning Standard Task 2. This task content standard is defined as follows. So, communicate appropriately to a small or large group on familiar topics. So at the end of the lesson, it is one of our goals for students to be able to present short stories, events, and experiences. For the activity, it is expected that students will complete a project with the topic Forest and Sustainable Production and Consumptions. The students are required to collaborate in group of 4 members each. They are tasked with thinking of a problem that can be discussed in relation to the topic that has been provided. After that, the student will need to narrate or to present their finding into a short story based on their experience. The summative assessment method is the one that will be used for the second task. The summative assessments are used to evaluate student learning, skill acquisition, and academic achievement at the conclusion of a defined instructional period. Typically, summative assessments are administered at the end of a project, unit, course, semester, program, or school year. Summative assessments are administered at the conclusion of a defined instructional period. At the end of a predetermined instructional period, a student will have the opportunity to take a summative examination. At the end of an instructional unit, a summative assessment is given to students in order to evaluate the learning that they have attained by comparing it to the certain standard. Next, the purpose of summative assessment. Firstly is to establish whether or not the student have acquired the knowledge that was anticipated for them. Secondly, to determine the level of learning progress and achievement, assess the efficiency of educational programs, measure the amount of progress made toward improvement goals. Next, to decide where a student should be placed in a course are some examples of possible applications. Lastly, to identify areas in which their existing knowledge could benefit for further development.
Hello everyone, my name is Nur Aisha, professor number 50816. So I'm going to start with the rubric for our task. So the task that I have given to the student is present a short story based on student understanding and their own experience based on the theme of forest and sustainable production and consumption. So under category, we created 4 category, which is preparedness, content, speak clearly, and grammar. So the weightage of it are very different. So content is more important among others. So the weightage is about 30%. So for preparedness and speak clearly, both of them are 20%, and lastly grammar is 50%. So we have level 1, 2, 3, and 4. For level 1 is beginning, level 2 developing, level 3 accomplish, and level 4 exemplary. For preparedness, which is 20%, for exemplary, students are completely prepared. For accomplished, student has prepared but need rehearsal, and for developing, student is somewhat prepared, and for beginning, student are not adequately prepared. So for content, which is the most important part of the category, which is the weightage is 20%. So for exemplary, student able to understand the material truly and be able to process it all. And for accomplished, student shows a fully understanding of the topic. And for developing, demonstrate a true knowledge of the sum of the material. And for beginning, student does not have a good grasp on the subject. So moving on to the speak clearly, for exemplary, student can communicate effectively and do not mispronounce words. For accomplished, student can communicate effectively but may occasionally mispronounce one or 2 words. For developing, student can communicate effectively but may occasionally mispronounce few words. For beginning, student mispronounce words are mispronounced and they frequently forget what they were going to say. So lastly, for grammar, which is the weightage is 50%. For exemplary, student made no errors at all. And for accomplished, only 1 or 2 errors. And for developing, more than 2 errors. And for beginning, student made a lot of errors, numerous errors. So moving on to the next one. Moving on to the advantages of using summative assessment. The first one, it can help students to develop self-assessment and learning management skill. Furthermore, it can also increase understanding and ability to think critically about content. The other advantages of using summative assessment is that it can foster an attitude that values long-term retention. It can also measure progress toward improvement goals and create freedom from active participation in discussion. Next, we'll be discussing about disadvantages of using summative assessment. The first one is that the task ahead can on circumstance be artificial and constrained. The next is the technique necessitates the use of test administrators who are aware of how to eliminate test bias, and it does not provide for correcting errors and not always an accurate representation of student learning, and it also creates enormous amount of time spent. So that's all for me. Thank you.